Huge news, historic news, as a matter of fact, that's coming out of the US right now. It's this report that's first been broken by the New York Times. You've got it right there. Former President Donald Trump, a grand jury has voted to indict him. There has been this report for weeks now. This first kicked off a couple of weeks ago when Donald Trump, remember, he said on Truth Social that Alvin Bragg was going to indict him, which essentially means arrest him. Then it kind of went cold. It was almost like Alvin Bragg got spooked, that Donald Trump perhaps outplayed him. Well, that turns out not to have been the case. If this report turns out to be true, that a grand jury in New York has voted to indict him. Remember, this is all about New York state laws, the hush money that was allegedly paid to the former porn star Stormy Daniels. That's not the issue. The issue is the money and where it came from. Did it come from campaign finances? Because that then needed to be reported. The New York state law suggests that there is a problem there that Donald Trump has to deal with. Now, Donald Trump supporters, they'll be fired up about this. We all know that. And by the way, this is a live shot. I'm not sure. To be quite honest with you, but everyone in the US is running with it. Presumably, it's somewhere where Donald Trump is at the moment, and perhaps we might get a comment from him. But this is obviously going to fire up Donald Trump's base. They believe that the Democrats, and Alvin Bragg is a Democrat, by the way, that the Democrats have engineered this. They tried to get him with Mueller. They tried to get him with an impeachment, not once, but twice. It all failed. So they're going at him again in his home state of New York. So what is this shot? Well, let's take our colleagues at Fox News, see what they're running with just for the next few moments.
Now as well, former South Carolina congressman and host of Sunday Night in America. Trey, jump on in here to the news, and what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a surprise, but quite candidly, we're not supposed to know what grand juries are doing. Ideally, this has been an exception. My position has not changed. I think it is the weakest of the four investigations. It's the wrong prosecutor, which you alluded to. It's the wrong fact pattern. You got statute of limitations issues. It's really a misdemeanor that put on a suit, and they want it to look like a felony. And I just look, when our justice system becomes a political tool, then we are on thin ice as a republic, and I think we are increasingly heading in that direction.
Trey, did Democrats just indict a former president over sex? Because we were told during the 90s that it was just sex, and it was just a private deal, and it had nothing to do with politics and nothing to do with policy. Weren't we told that? And you have to understand, he says he didn't have sex with this woman. She had her hand out saying, hey, I'm not going to say anything unless you pay me. So either it's a consensual sexual encounter or it's a shakedown. And Democrats want to make that a felony?
Well, keep in mind, it can't be sex because Alvin Bragg, among the many crimes he said he was no longer going to prosecute, prostitution was on that list. So it can't be about sex. It is the falsification of a business record, which, look, I'm not in favor of. You shouldn't do it. It's a misdemeanor. You have the only reason it's a felony is if it is in furtherance of another crime. And right now, because we haven't seen the indictment, we don't know what that other crime is. If it's a federal election law violation, the U.S. attorney's already taken a pass on this case. So, again, I'm not speaking for the other jurisdictions that have the former president under investigation. I've always thought special counsel was factually the one where he was in the most peril. I don't know why you wouldn't go with your strongest case. And I can tell you right now, Jack Smith probably is not happy about it either because prosecutors always go with your strongest factual and legal case. This ain't that.
Trey, this is Greg. How you doing?
Hello, Greg.
I miss you. Anyway, everybody always says, nobody is above the law. No one's above the law. It's so trite. But it feels like no one should be below the law either. And it feels like Trump has been made to be below the law. You don't have to meet any standards or criteria. Is that fair to say?
I think it is fair from this regard. Remember with the Mueller report, we don't do press conferences. Well, actually, frankly, Hillary Clinton also. We don't do press conferences on uncharged people.
Yeah.
That is below the law. We don't release investigative reports if we're not going to indict someone. That is below the law. So there are plenty of examples on both sides of our justice system being weaponized. So I would think that this would be something that we universally rejected, but unfortunately, if it's done to our opponents, we like it, and if it's done to our friends, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Trey, it's Jessica. I'm curious what you think, the impact of this is going to be on the current GOP politics and maybe even some independents and moderate Democrats, in fact.
Well, I don't think it will have any impact, or if it has an impact, it'll be a positive impact within your traditional GOP primary voters. I mean, the allegations themselves used to be troubling maybe 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. I mean, paying hush money to, I don't like the phrase porn star, but that's the phrase they use. So people already know the facts, and they've already made up their minds about this.
All right, we'll leave that there. That's what's going on right now in New York City. We are presumably waiting to see or hear anything from the Trump campaign, and we haven't yet. I'm scrolling through my inbox to see whether there's something. There hasn't been anything just yet from Donald Trump. He had suspected this. In a timeline, folks, that I said a short time ago. It was a few weeks ago. Remember when he said on Truth Social that he was going to be indicted by Alvin Bragg, the district attorney in New York. Then the case ran cold for a bit. It was almost like he outplayed him. He outspooked him. Well, a grand jury today voting, according to the New York Times, that it will indict him.